Good evening. You're tuned into Art Television and this is the State of Business. I'm Nishani Figuera. Let's first take a look at tonight's main stories. AmCham launches white paper on FDI landscape and investor sentiment. And Sri Lanka should expedite judicial proceedings, says Paul Godfrey. The American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka launched a white paper titled FDI Landscape and Investor Sentiment in Sri Lanka in Colombo this morning. Delivering a presentation at the event, founder and CEO of Stax, Rafi Mushar, noted that growth in FDI inflows into Sri Lanka has stalled over the last couple of years, mostly due to the removal of certain tax concessions granted to incoming investors.
The white paper was launched by the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka in collaboration with global strategic consulting firm Stax. This report brings together various statistics from multiple resources in order to paint a comprehensive picture of the quantum of the FDI coming into Sri Lanka. The report also looks at several recent developments that will impact the quantum of FDI of the next few years, which includes a couple of flagship investment projects as well as reforms such as the new tax incentive scheme.
Stax, way over here, 2005. We saw capital post-war coming in, lots more capital coming in, which is great. Tax changes, it all drops. A little bit of a rebound due to some clarity and bringing back the tax credits. And then you have coming to 2016, 17, it's growing. We put some of this here as debt converting to equity, but still it's on a pretty nice growth trajectory. And so that's a good thing. The capital seems to be coming back in, but it's not, there hasn't been a huge jump. Like you'll see other countries, and this is kind of flat for just from a personal experience over the last dozen years here, and a lot of the companies that I visited, there's a lot of growth. And there's a tremendous amount of growth opportunity. And as we'll get to it, there's a lot of talent here, therefore there should be a lot more capital coming in. And I think whether or not you want to set a target for it or try to push it higher, there should be lots of opportunity. Also 2018 obviously becomes a pretty big question because there's not a lot of guidance on policy. And there's another election coming up too. And I know it's not next week, but still, people think about that. If I deploy capital next year and then 2 years later everything's going to change, gee, did I have to do the math now to figure out will I recoup my investment in the 2-year period before something could change all over again?
Speaking exclusively to Art Television, Managing Director of Stax, Kumudu Gunasekara asserted the following recommendations to facilitate FDI inflows into the country.
AmCham just launched the FDI report, which is a report that surveyed about 38 member companies, and they have asserted a few ideas as to what's prevailing in the country right now. A couple of recommendations that came from that is, one was to have one unified agency to maintain and operate FDI into Sri Lanka. Policy stability, with investors want stability when they come to invest into Sri Lanka. Another aspect was to really brand Sri Lanka from an FDI perspective, because there are very different institutions go across the world and brand Sri Lanka in different ways. We really don't have a brand identity from an investor perspective. Another was to take hold of our technology, because we have a lot of potential in our labor force for technology, and how do you use that as a positive going forward. So there were some of the things.
In an interview with Art Television, head of the Political Trade and Communications section of the European Union delegation to Sri Lanka and Maldives, Paul Godfrey noted that in order to attract adequate foreign direct investments from the European countries, Sri Lanka should expedite its judicial proceedings. He also noted that progressive long-term economic visions will make Sri Lanka an upper-middle income country if they are properly implemented.
There are still challenges around the transparency of issues. Certainly coming from a European perspective, we have very high levels of transparency in the way that business is conducted. And it's very difficult for European companies to operate if they're not confident about how the money is being spent, for instance, on a contract. There are questions around issues such as contract enforcement and speed of the judicial processes in order to settle any disputes that arise, which is, of course, inevitable. So, I mean, these are some of the challenges that if you're a European company coming to Sri Lanka that you face, which are difficult to navigate, and where if Sri Lanka is keen to attract further investment, there needs to be more progress. The Prime Minister's vision in terms of making Sri Lanka a hub for South Asia is a very sensible and logical one. There's clearly a gap in the market for somewhere in South Asia that can really show a kind of excellence in business and commerce in the way that Singapore functions in Southeast Asia. So Sri Lanka needs to be clearly ahead of the other economies in the region, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, in terms of then being a base for international companies to operate here and to set a standard which can drive progress across the whole region, not just in Sri Lanka. So I think that should be the long-term vision, and through that Sri Lanka could move quite quickly into being a upper middle income country and even beyond. So I think that's the long-term potential. But it's one thing to have the vision. The problem is people need to see the actual steps taking place and the concrete progress in order to really make that happen.
When asked about the impact of Brexit on Sri Lanka, Godfrey noted that Sri Lanka will have less disruptions than anticipated. Paul Godfrey also assured that the European Union will continue to be the largest export market for Sri Lanka.
In terms of GSP Plus, I believe it's likely that the United Kingdom will come up with a similar style trade preference agreement at some point, but until that's clear, then it's obviously difficult to be 100% sure about the impact. From an EU perspective, I mean, we will continue to be one of the largest markets for Sri Lankan exports, even without the UK, and I think there's a sound basis on which for that to develop further in the future. Obviously, we all wait to see what the final arrangement between the European Union and the United Kingdom will be, but I suspect there will be less disruption for Sri Lanka than is widely anticipated.
The State of Business will return with more news after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching The State of Business. Speaking exclusively to our television, the CEO and development agent of Subway Sri Lanka, Nathan Wills, said that he expects to utilize local entrepreneurship to expand the Subway brand across the island.
The QSR sector obviously is quite in demand. People looking for that fast-paced environment with a different menu setting. So for us, we're looking at menu developments. We're also looking at healthy eating as being one of our key drivers of profitability and new customers. But I guess long-term, we're looking at 40 to 50 restaurants based on the model that has been used in other countries, such as franchising. So using local entrepreneurs, bringing them on as investments and looking at growing stores across the island.
During a press briefing held in Colombo today, Member of Parliament S.B. Disanayake made the following remarks with regard to the recent increase in fuel prices.
ඔබතුමාලා දන්නා පහුගිය දවස්වල එකපාරටම රාත්‍රියේ තෙල් මිල වැඩි කරා. ඒක පිළිබඳව ජනාධිපති මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මහත්මයාට කිසිම දැනුම් දීමක් කරලා තිබ්බේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා එතුමා පහවදා ඒක අවලංගු කරලා දැම්මා. හැබැයි ආපහු කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේදී මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ මතු කරලා ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේත් එකඟත්වයෙන් ඒ තෙල් මිල වැඩි කරන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. මේකට ප්‍රධාන කාරණේ තමයි මාස්පතා නෙවෙයි සතිපතා. පුළුවන් නම් මේ ලෝකයේ තෙල් මිල වෙනස් වීම අනුව තෙල් මිල වෙනස් කරන්න අපේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලට එකඟ වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ පිළිබඳ ගිවිසුම් පත්‍ර හුවමාරු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ඒ අනුව ජනාධිපතිවරයාටවත් එතුමා ඒ තෙල් මිල වැඩි කිරීම නැවැත්තුවත් ඒක තියාගන්න බැරි වුණා. ඒ නිසා ඒක වැඩි කරා.
Stocks closed on a positive note today. Let's take a look at the details after this break. Welcome back to the show. Trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The oil share price index gained 26.15 points to close at 6,118.8, and the S&P SL20 gained 18.01 points to close at 3,336.41. Turnover was 586 million rupees and 18.8 million shares were traded. Up next are the day's forex rates. And that wraps up the show for tonight. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening.